We are live. We are live. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fit Parent Project, guys. Today, as you were tuning in, as you were either listening to this live or if you are listening to this on the podcast, I am joined today by a very badass individual that I am very grateful to not only work with as a client, but also work with her as a coach on my team. Her name is Erin. And yeah, for those of you guys that don't know her, I'm going to just go ahead and let her say hi. What's up, Erin?
Hey.
Where tell the people a little bit about yourself before we kind of jump into this episode.
Alrighty. So I'm a mom of three kids. They're 7, 10, and 12. And we virtual school. So I'm basically the facilitator teacher.
Yeah.
And so we're busy all the time.
I know. Yeah, you're busy
Yeah.
all the freaking time. But
Yep.
today, guys, we are going to be talking about kind of like the mindset. If you didn't see the title of this episode before you clicked on it, I don't know what you're doing. But if you didn't see the title of this episode, it's about the mindset of a mom who has lost 70 pounds, which is like right now, that's pretty much right where you're at right now, right, Erin? Like you're down
Yeah.
basically 70 pounds. Even right now, we're like reverse dieting, which some people might not know what that is, but you're down like almost 70 pounds, and it's just like so freaking crazy. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, guys. Is just some of the mindset shifts that Erin has seen and has kind of like experienced in her own health and fitness journey. And so just kind of talking about that, kind of breaking that down, just kind of like giving you guys some insight of like, like a lot of times the way I view mentorship or coaching, or, if you want to get somewhere that you're not there yet, learning from somebody that has literally done what you want to do is one of the best ways to do it, because it's basically like downloading some of the parts of their mindset or their brain into your own, so that way you can do the things that they did. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So yeah, welcome, Erin. Welcome. And so we can just kind of jump into it if that sounds good to you.
Sounds great.
Sweet, cool. So let's talk about mindset, right? Because like a lot of times people feel like they're when they're starting a health or a fitness journey or a weight loss journey, a lot of times people are very like hyper fixated on just the physical side of things. And I mean, that's fair, right? I mean, whenever people think of like weight loss journeys or things like that, they think about the changes that their bodies are going to go through and the changes that their bodies are going to see. But I feel like a lot of times what people fail to realize is how important the mindset side of things is, because at the end of the day, the body will only do what the mind wills it to do. And so, working on that mindset is one of the best things that I think people can do whenever they're starting a health and fitness journey. And so for you, I know we kind of talked about some of the things that some of the potential topics that we're going to kind of talk about today. So for you, one of the things that we mentioned was the all or nothing mindset. And so for you, how important was it for you, shifting from that all in, all out mentality to, where you're at right now?
Oh, it was huge. I I was thinking back to how I was thinking, like my mindset and my thoughts when I first started out.
Yeah.
And like one of the biggest things I had to do was let go of all of the negativity that I had learned.
Yeah.
And like that focus only on the scale, or you know only on making huge cuts to my diet, or getting rid of food groups,
Yeah.
or it was all like it in my head. It was, I have to do everything 100% perfect all of the time.
Yeah.
And so like I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting the results that I wanted,
Yeah.
trying to do everything 100% perfect.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
when
Falling.
really I was
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and and I think one of the like most, I think, important things of like traits of somebody that's going to succeed in their journey with literally anything, whether that's in life or like business or weight loss or fitness journey, like or a career path or whatever it may be, like having the ability to like learn from our mistakes, or having the like the introspection, or like the wherewithal to be like or the awareness to be like man, like this isn't working, right? Like, why isn't this working? And being able to take a step back and thinking like, well, maybe this isn't the like right way to go about it, or maybe this isn't, that's something a lot of people fall kind of like victim to, is just like they keep trying the same shit over and over again. They keep trying, and a lot of times the shit that they're having to try over and over again, there's a reason why you're having to do it over and over again in the first place, and it's probably because it's unsustainable. But
Exactly.
people think back like, oh, like that last time that I lost like 10, 20 pounds was when I was doing this thing. And so I'm going to go back to doing that thing. But it's like, if that thing actually worked, why are you doing it again to lose the same weight that you'd already lost, but then regain back? Right. And so I think a lot of times people fall into that, that kind of vicious cycle. And so for you, right. So for those of you guys that don't know, so is it cool if we talk about just kind of like where you started at with where you're
Totally.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So like, for those of you guys that don't know, like whenever we first started working together, Erin was at around like 230, right? Like around 230 pounds. And now she's like on the cusp, if not already there. Check-in days are coming up. So, or like coming up, not this week, but next week. But we're on like the cusp of like 160, right? And so like for like that shift in mindset, that shift in all out mentality for like where 230 Erin was at to being at where 160 Erin is at right now, like how long did it take for you to like, because I feel like a lot of times people are like expecting like, I'm going to work on my mindset, and then like a day or two later, when their mindset's not fixed or shit, they're like, man, why isn't this working? But like, it takes time. Like
It really does.
Yeah, like it's taken decades to get our mindset into a negative place where we're not necessarily, maybe not even negative, but just like in a unsustainable place in a lot of time, in a lot of ways, to, it's taken decades to build that negative aspect of our mindset. It's going to take some time to develop it into a positive, mindset that's conducive to our goals. And so for you, going from kind of like 230 Erin to 160 Erin, timeline wise, like how long, and it's probably I feel like your answer is probably going to be like, well, it's still a work in progress, but still, but like what for you, like how long did do you think that it kind of like took you like timeline wise to get from where you were to where you are now?
I don't know. I want to say it's just always been a work in progress.
Yeah.
So like when I first started with you, my mindset, the mindset I was working on was just trust the process.
Yeah.
Because when I first started, you gave me what I thought was a ridiculous amount of calories and a ridiculous amount of protein and carbs and fat. I'm like, what? I can't, like, how is that? That's not going to work. That's not a thing. Like, what? No, like, that's and so I just kept telling myself, trust the process. If this doesn't work, then, you move on to something else.
Yeah.
And I mean, it worked.
Clearly. Yeah.
and it and then I worked on my mindset around food. Instead of giving it a moral connotation, like bad food, good food. It was food is food that you need to eat. So then that way your body can do what you want it to do and you can reach your goals.
Yeah.
And so it's just been like these little baby steps that have all added up to where I am now. Yeah. And I'm to the point now where if it's a birthday, I'll have birthday cake and not beat myself up afterwards, Yeah. Or, the kids really want pizza. Well, let's go have pizza.
It's
one
like
of those things that
it's like real life. It's like,
it's real life.
It's like you get to like actually exist, and like, it's like, that's because I feel like a lot of times there's a couple of things I want to touch on that you said, but one of the things that I feel like a lot of people are afraid of starting a health and fitness journey because they don't think that they're going to be able to do it. Because anytime you see somebody online, be it like, they're like, I'm going to start this health journey, or I'm going to start this weight loss journey. They're doing these like, and there's going way to the extreme from
exercising every day.
Yeah. And they're like, I'm only eating, vegetables and fruit and chicken, or I'm only eating chicken and broccoli for the next like 6 months. It's like, okay, like, what are you going to do whenever that's done though? Like, like, what are you going to, like, how are you going to maintain that long term? And it's like, you're not. And so like finding a way to where you can make your health and fitness journey as sustainable as possible, but also as like, as much of a lifestyle as it is a journey. Like, I think that that's like one of the key things that a lot of people need to get to, or kind of like work their way towards in their own health and fitness journeys, is like, it doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to suck as much as people think it's going to suck, because like, yeah, there's some things that you need to learn at the beginning, and yes, there's going to be some,
it's hard to
failures.
learn new things.
Yeah.
No matter what the new
Yeah.
thing is, it's hard at first to learn new things.
Yeah.
But even now, like, I find that getting in my nutrition and getting in my workouts, that's the easy part.
Yeah.
It's life that's harder.
Yeah, exactly. Because now it's like, it's so much a part of your like yourself, like the essence of that is you, that it's like, it's almost like second nature now. It's like waking up, it's like brushing your teeth. It's like, of course I'm going to do my workout. It's like, of course I'm going to like, track my food or get my protein. It's like, it's what I do every fucking day. Like, why would today be any different? Right. And it's like the life shit that actually like makes things like more chaotic and difficult. And it's like I know what I need to do. It's just, I need like life to like chill the fuck out for a little bit so I can do these things that I need to do. And having the habit and the routine of it definitely makes it easier. And I think I was just talking to Jessica Sandlin the other day, actually, about
she's done a lot too. She's been working hard.
Yeah, she's down, I think, 50 pounds now in the last like year, which is crazy, like awesome. And just as a heads up, or just to everybody listening to this right now, she's also going to be I confirmed that she's going to be a guest on a podcast potentially next week, so stay tuned for that. So that's going to be cool and exciting. But for her, like kind of like what you were saying, and this is where I was trying to get at with that, was it's like, it's almost like a part of you now. It's almost like it's like almost like that, of course I do it, that's what I do every kind of day type of deal. And like, I was talking to her a little bit about, earlier this week, about how, she's able to, get her nutrition in like really like quite easily now, even though it used to be really fucking hard for her to stay consistent with it. But now, like, even in the chaos of like, it's like sports season for her kids and shit like that, and like they're going to like multiple games a week, like, and for multiple sports for multiple kids, and like she's still able to like, she's like, I can get my nutrition in so much easier now. And it's like, yeah, it's because you've been fucking practicing for the last like 6 months to a year of doing this. It's like, that's what we've been training for, right? Is for those scenarios where life can get chaotic and hectic. And so yeah, no, that's, and I think that's something that a lot of times people feel like, it's never going to get easier. When in reality, it's like, it's just a learning curve. And once you can kind of get through whatever your own unique learning curve is, it does become more like just a part of your life, basically, at that point. So the other thing I wanted to touch on, though, that you mentioned was, and kind of expanding on that a little bit more, is like trusting the process, right? Like trusting the process. Like, when you first started working with me, like you said, like, I just gave you, like, you're like, oh my gosh, look at, like, this is a lot of food. Like, this is a lot of like protein, like, oh my God, like, that kind of stuff. So for somebody out there who's listening to this right now, who, has a hard time trusting the process, or who has a hard time believing, like, kind of like going against the grain of what they've always, thought was what they should be doing for a weight loss journey, or what they always thought they should be doing for a health and fitness journey, which, usually is like burnout route with like starving themselves, super low calorie, like tons of cardio, all that kind of shit. Like, what would you say to somebody in that position or in that mentality, to kind of like what helped you trust the process, I guess, when you were at that place?
So I do a lot of self pep talks.
Yeah.
For everything. Like, I have anxiety, I have depression. And so I find that like talking to myself and prepping myself up, being my own cheerleader,
yeah.
it helps. And so like, so and I knew at that time, because I was a fitness coach in person with cardio drumming for a while. I knew that like, you can't always expect change right away.
Yeah.
Like, you have to get rid of that timeline. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this a month. Yeah. And if it doesn't work, then I'll try something else, because, so I just kept telling myself over and over again, I'd write it down. I just like look in the mirror and go, trust the process. Like, he says do this, I gotta trust him. I hired him because you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's an authority. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I need to just let go
Yeah.
and trust.
I
And
yeah.
yeah.
I love that. I was gonna say too, not sorry, not to interrupt,
Nope.
but like
Nope. You're
I
fine.
I feel like having, because you had friends that were already
Yeah.
working with that. So like you there was some of that like almost like kind of like trust there too. It's like, okay, like he's gonna tell
It,
me to do these things,
it's
even
worked
though
for my friends too.
yeah, it's like
So
this sounds crazy to me right now, but maybe it also sounded crazy to them when they first started. And it's almost like that, like once you can kind of see the proof is in the pudding, even if it's from other people's experiences, I think that that can um help maybe calm some of the anxiousness around, like, oh my gosh, I got to eat all this food that, like, I'm trying to lose weight here, like, why are you giving me so much food, even though as we all know, it's part of the process anyways
yep. Yep.
for that. And I mean, clearly it's worked out, and it's panned out really well, because I mean, shit, you're 70 pounds down now, which is pretty fucking cool. But trusting the process. So you mentioned what you mentioned getting to a place of where you're like letting go. That's right, time frame, like the timeline. So for you, like you mentioned, like letting go of a time frame, for your goals and for your journey. And so for you, kind of like, what has that looked like? Because I think that's an important thing for a lot of people, because I've said it before. It's like, at the end of the day, you're not going to care how long it took you to fucking get there. You're just going to be happy that you got there. And so for you, how does that help you in your journey?
So like trying to reframe my expectations.
Yeah.
So knowing that it's healthy to lose, if you're losing a half a pound to 2 pounds a week, that's like a healthy,
Mm-hmm.
sustainable. And, when you are doing a fad diet and you're losing more than that,
Yeah.
that's not, it's not going to be sustainable, and you're not
Yeah.
going to actually end up with the results that you
Yeah.
want, because part of only losing that smaller amount is also you building muscle.
Yep.
And so it's just like reframing and relearning how the whole fitness thing works. And instead of going, well, I want this thing, like more defined muscles on my arm, or more toned, or whatever you
Yeah.
want to say for your arms, and
Yeah.
you're like, I want to do it in a month.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how your body's going to work,
Yeah.
because everybody kind of, they lose in different areas at
Yep.
different times and different speeds.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
and you never know if there's going to be a setback. You could get
Yep.
sick,
Yep.
so then, there's people with broken bones, and,
Yep.
so you've got to take that time to rest and heal, because that's
Yep.
so important. So getting rid of this time frame in your mind
Mm.
and just letting it happen
Yep.
as it happens
Yep.
is so important. And then you don't stress about
Mm.
that as well.
Yeah.
You're not as focused on the
Yep.
scale,
Yep.
and you're more focused on, okay, I
Mm.
am making progress. I can see this progress.
Yep.
I will get there,
Yep.
versus knowing, because
Yes.
you can't
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, exactly. I love what, like, the only thing that's guaranteed is today, right? I mean, literally
Right.
anything crazy could happen. It's like trying to like keep ourselves on this like timeline, which for a lot of people is unrealistic anyways in the first place, because we have, like even me, and I preach this, I talk about this shit every fucking day to clients on social media and things like that. I say, like, you're not going to care, when you get there, you're just gonna be glad that you got there in the first place. But also, like, for me in my own life, like, I'll step on the scale or something like that, and like I see, I'm like, oh, like, why didn't it move? Like, and even then I have to, like, catch myself and be like, hey, like, that's like literally what you tell other people not to fucking like worry about. Like, why are you worried? But it's because we've been so conditioned from the
We
last,
have.
30, 40 years of, like, fitness industry, supplement industry, weight loss industry, like bullshit, where it's just been just like force fed to us through like TV and social media and all these other
Mhm.
things, that it's like it's hard to work through those thought patterns, and work through those ways of thinking that we've all been kind of subjected to for a long period of time. And so, just for those of you that are like, listen to this and you're like, man, I can't get through it, I can't stop thinking that way. It's going to take time. It's going to take time, and it's going to take work, and it's going to take being proactive on a daily fucking basis, like reminding yourself, like, hey, like, it's time to enjoy the journey itself rather than the destination. I think people that see them, and this, I've seen this in your journey, like time and time again, it's the people who can, like, yes, we all want to reach our goals. Like, yes, we all want to get there. Like, who doesn't want that? Like, that's, everybody wants to cross the finish line at some point, but recognizing that if you can value the journey for and enjoy the journey for just the sake of the journey itself, like, putting in the reps, but without even fucking counting them, right? Like, just doing the work and showing up and being consistent for the sake of being consistent. Like, that's going to get you to your goals. Like, you're going to get there eventually. Like, that's a very common thing that I've noticed for people who see the most success, is that they just fall in love with the process rather than, trying to like get to their goal as quickly as possible. Like, just, again, trusting that process. And so, like, for you, in terms of, letting go of that timeline, do you feel like it was like I think you mentioned it actually, but like was there a feeling of like being like free, or like was it liberating to be like, I don't care?
It was very liberating. And I also letting go of the timeline, getting rid of like focusing only on the scale. When I reached 175, I was looking at pictures of that, and I remember trying to lose weight before my wedding, which was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
And I struggled to make 175, and the body differences.
Yeah.
Even at that. So like that helped me even more to just go, the scale is just measuring, gravity and mass and all that.
Yeah.
And not it's not measuring so many other things. It's only like one angle to view it.
One factor among many.
Realizing that just let me like let go of that stress as well, and just like,
I love that. I love that.
Journey.
Yeah, I love that. That's a very like, when you said that, I instantly thought of a really OG client. She's not working with us right now, but her name was Signe, and she was from Scandinavia, and she's going to be mad at me if I mess that up, Scandinavia or Sweden. Over there. But she had a very similar kind of like mentality or mental shift or mindset shift with her, and her journey was like, because she was like around like 185, 190 between there. And we, got to around like between 170 and 175. And it's just like the body composition shift and just like all these other like non-scale victories that add up over time that, come to this like point where it's like, oh my gosh, like I've got all these incredible fucking things going for me, and I feel great. I feel I'm very confident in how I look, and I feel like, all these other great things that are going on, but the scale didn't necessarily say exactly what we want to in some of those scenarios, and just recognizing, but she was like, I don't care about the fucking scale anymore. Like, it doesn't have power over me like it used to. And because of that, like, I'm able to like, I'm just so much happier in my journey. And just because I'm just doing it because it's a lifestyle now, it's my life now, rather than just like constantly just like striving towards like a lower number just because it's a lower number, or just because like, that's, because like you just said with your wedding example, you could look and feel completely different at the same weight depending on how you got there, right? I mean, it's crazy. And so it's like, when people talk about like BMI, or they're like, I really want to hit this like number on the scale, like whenever they're like, even like when they're applying to like work with us, like, and I'm going through their application, sometimes I'll just be like, yeah, like that's a cool goal to like, that's a good like pinpoint to like kind of strive towards. But I always try to emphasize, like, we'll see how we feel as we're approaching that. Like, we might be 10, 15 pounds away from that. You might be really fucking happy and feel your best. And like, because the muscle you've built and all these other, and the body recomp that's happening, just like kind of preparing the mind a little bit for like, hey, like, that's cool to have that goal, but don't be so hyper fixated on it that, that it's going to like, throw you off your journey, or,
right. Yeah. You got to plant those seeds to get their mind to open up to the freedom of just enjoying the journey and going, yep, look at where I was last month compared to this month, and and looking where you are now versus the past you, and
I think and that's just another testament to how like important progress photos are. Like, that's so important to like progress photos.
They are, especially at first.
Yeah, especially as hard as they are at the beginning, because a lot of times, I mean, people won't take them. People are afraid of taking them, or they don't even like, not even for posting on social media, or not even for
Oh
like,
yeah,
you know,
no,
they
they just don't want to take them at all.
yeah,
And I mean, honestly, I didn't want to,
yeah, yeah,
but I said, if this works, I'm
yeah,
going to appreciate having the progress photos. And I was actually chatting with another friend
mm,
about my progress photos, and she goes, "That's one thing I didn't do.
mm,
I didn't take any progress photos. I like avoided the camera,
yeah, yeah,
and so I don't have anything to document my journey."
yeah,
And she goes, "So that's really awesome that you do." And I'm like,
yeah, yeah. So,
"Yeah."
the word of the wise for those of you who are
Word
thinking
of the
about
wise.
starting a journey, like, it may be fucking anxiety inducing. It may cause you to be, you might not like it, right? And it's okay. And it may feel uncomfortable, but recognize that that feeling of being uncomfortable, oftentimes, one, it means that, you fucking care about the outcome. It means that you care and that you're like, you want this. And the other thing I would say too is that, like, being uncomfortable is not a bad fucking thing.
You don't
It's
grow.
yeah, yeah,
If you stay in your comfort zone,
yeah,
you're not going to grow. You're going to stay there.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I think, like, what better way to like kick off that, like, getting out of your comfort zone than doing something like that? Because those of you that are out there like starting your journey, like, you it may feel a little bit uncomfortable to take those photos. Like, even if you take them and you like bury them in your photo somewhere so that way you don't, like, one day, if you continue to show up for yourself, you're going to be so fucking glad that you took those photos, because you're going to have something to look back on, to compare it to in those moments, especially when you might be doubting yourself, when you may be like, I don't know, I don't feel like I've made any progress. If you don't have that first picture that you have to show
yep.
the disparity between how far you've come, like, I have people, I have, our clients, I have them use that as a tool sometimes. I'm like, look how I'll put it, I'll take
Oh yeah,
their
yeah.
now and their before. I'm like, look how far you fucking come. Like, what do you mean that you haven't, like, you haven't, I'm like, you're down like 30 pounds or something like that. And it's just like, but when in the day to day, our emotions can get in our head. Our emotions can kind of like throw us off. It can cause us to self-sabotage, and just having that reminder that is just like readily available to you to like tap into, to be like, no, motherfucker, like, I need to zoom out. Look how far I've come. Look how much progress I've made, to help kind of
Yeah.
like ground yourself in your own like journey, and to give you almost that like confidence boost. Like, no, I am on the right path. I am doing the right stuff. Like, look how far I've come. And I think that, having those progress photos can be really important for that. So, but yeah, no, that's, yeah. And your
And the
progress
other
photos,
thing
say,
too is the clients are trusting us
yeah,
to help them reach their journey, but we're also trustworthy. If they really don't want their photo shared, it's
yeah.
not a big
Oh,
deal.
yeah.
We,
I always fucking ask. I'm not. Yeah, it's like literally, it's like, that's your shit. Like, it's your private
right,
shit. Like, I'm
exactly.
not, yeah. I've
I've
had,
had to explain that a few times. I'm like, no, no, no.
yeah,
I don't share photos without
yeah,
permission. Don't worry about
yeah,
it.
yep.
Like
It's
this
literally,
is, if you want it to stay between the two of us, that's
yep,
fine.
yep,
This is more
absolutely,
for you, so you have another area to win in.
yep,
Because that's how
absolutely.
I look at it. I'm like, the body measurements, the scale, and the photos are three of many other ways, but
Oh yeah,
three big ways to like track
yeah.
wins.
And
So
that's, I think that's so like important too, like, because I feel like that's kind of what, like, I don't know, makes us a little bit different in terms of how what we like. Yes, we like to celebrate when somebody hits
yeah,
a weight loss milestone. Like, that's awesome. Again, and it should be celebrated. But we really fucking like go hard on the non-scale victories. Like, every check-in form that clients fill out, it's always like, tell us like two non-scale victories that you had this week. Like, because and every week we have winning Wednesday in the private group, because it's just like, like, celebrate some shit, like, celebrate that shit. Like, there's far too often, like, I feel like this is the case with a lot of gyms and a lot of other in-person things, or even other programs. Are just like, all they seem to like care about, or they're just very hyper fixated on those numbers, right? The part of it's because they know people, that's what people fucking want initially whenever they're like getting into their journey or whatever. They want to see those numbers change. But I think it's really cool that what we do here is that we really do focus a lot on those non-scale victories, because that gives people to celebrate a lot, like, you can constantly celebrate non-scale victories. You can constantly,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
and especially in those moments, maybe when the scale's being a dick to you, whenever that's you are having a weight fluctuation because of, you know, some other random factor that's probably
So
not
many.
even related to fat loss. That's not even related to fat, like fat gain. You know, in those moments, it can really, again, ground you and anchor you to be like, nah, like I am making progress. Like, you know, I'm gonna tell that little inner bitch voice to like leave me alone, because I can prove it wrong by showing it these things. So yeah, I think that's, you know, pretty fucking cool that we're, you know, making that happen. Not to humble brag on ourselves, but we're, you know, I think we're doing okay. So
I think so.
what was that?
I said, I think so.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So for you, I know we're kind of coming up towards the end of the episode, but for you, because we kind of talked about, you know, we've talked about, you know, getting out of that all in all out mentality. We've talked about trusting the process, and we've talked about, you know, the importance of kind of letting go of that time frame in the sense of in a healthy way, right? Because I think it's
Yeah.
good
Oh,
because
yeah. Like
just because you like all the time frame.
So
Yeah.
when I started with you, I
Yeah.
wanted to be smaller before we went on spring break.
Yep.
And I started with you in December, and spring break wasn't until
Yeah.
April.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was a reasonable amount
Yep.
of time. It wasn't rushing things,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
And I don't remember if I wanted to be 20 pounds down. I think that was my goal, was 20 pounds, and I
You blew
crushed
that out
it.
of the
But
water. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
but like, you know, giving yourself the reasonable time
Yep.
frame, you know, it's I keep seeing these things, you know, take 2 spoonfuls of this and lose 10 pounds in a week. And it's like, no, 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 no,
Literally just
no.
made my eye twitch. Like,
I know.
anytime I see
Every
that
time I
shit,
see that, I'm just like,
oh,
oh,
like my
no,
eyes just want to fucking
no.
roll in the back of my head like the goddamn exorcist every time I hear that shit or read that shit. And it's like, I see people post that stuff, even on like, and I'm usually pretty good about restraining myself from leaving comments or things like that. Cause it's like, I know that 99% of the people out there don't know any better, but then there's some times where I'm like, oh, and then I end up getting blocked, but that's fine. It's okay. It's all good. but yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's just like, I think there's a good balance of letting go of the time frame, like not having it pressure you to feel like, oh, I didn't lose a pound this week, oh, I'm fucking up. I think letting go of that
Right.
time frame.
Right.
But I think, and like you said, like having like a realistic goal in mind to kind of like strive towards a little bit, I think is also totally fine. And so yeah, I think that's a good kind of like mentality to kind of come into your journey with. And so so we've talked about all those things. And so for you right now, what I'm just curious. So for you, we've been crushing, you know, the reverse diet that we've had you on now. Like, I mean,
I'm eating more now than what I did when I started with you.
yeah, I know. And you lost like 5 or 6 pounds even on the fucking reverse diet, which is great.
Yep.
I mean, that's
Oh,
awesome.
yeah.
And so for you, you know, now that we're kind of on this reverse diet, like for you, I'm just curious, like what are your, you know, goals going forward for your own health and fitness journey now that I mean, we're coming up on a pretty big, like, I guess like milestone point. You know, for you, what's kind of next for you? Or have you thought about that? Not to put you on the spotlight.
Right. I definitely want to reach higher PRs.
Yep.
Like that's, yeah. I know that I can get there, and
Yeah.
it feels so good to be the strong one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially because before I started with you, my back was out, and I had to have other people do all of the lifting and everything. And now I'm like, okay, you need that picnic table moved. I got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've literally lifted a picnic table by myself,
Yeah.
and I didn't throw my back out, and I wasn't in pain for like a week, you know, like I had been before. I wouldn't have even tried to lift a picnic table without help before.
Yeah.
And so it feels amazing to just keep getting stronger. And you know, I've got like a picture in my mind of how I want my body to look, but I don't have a specific time frame because it's going to do what it's going to do. And it's, you know, like,
I love that. I love the, like the clarity there too. Like, it's like, I think a lot of people like having a picture in your mind of what you want, I think is important because it kind of like can pull you through, and it can kind of keep you motivated in those moments whenever you're, you know, maybe not feeling so motivated. But
Mhm.
yeah, but go ahead. What were you saying? Sorry.
Oh no. But like one of the things I have in my mind that I want more abs. I want
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
that, and so right now I'm starting to see like the definition
Yeah.
and seeing like, hey, I got baby abs. And
Yeah.
I'm excited,
Yeah.
and so like it's going to happen when it happens,
Yep.
but you know,
That's awesome. And I mean, and we're doing it the right way too, which is
we
more
are, we
like
are. It's
because
sustainable.
yep.
I'm enjoying the journey.
Yep.
And like there was a point when we were at like a decrease. We
Yeah.
were in a calorie deficit, and I just started feeling tired and like
Yep.
crap. And I said, "Hey, Austin,
Yeah.
so,"
Yep.
and that's when we started the reverse diet
Yep.
because that's how it should work.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
body needed more fuel. My
Yeah.
metabolism was saying, "Come on, we
Yep.
need more." And so like getting in touch with my body,
Yeah.
and listening to it has been part of this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like I want to reiterate something that you said, like you're 70 pounds down and you're eating more food than you did whenever we first started, which is like
Yeah.
fucking awesome and crazy. And just is like just goes to show the power of like having a good game plan in place for and also just having like having somebody kind of like and just monitoring those things, whether you're doing it on your own or having somebody else kind of like have kind of like a second set of eyes on it. Like having somebody that can be like be there and offer like a suggestion or like, hey, like, yeah, we're kind of getting to the bottom of the barrel of your calories right now. And also you're starting to feel a little bit like shit. Okay.
Mhm.
That's a good indicator that we should probably run a reverse diet. And then lo and behold, we built we built your calorie pool up. We're at like, I mean, we're still doing the reverse diet right now. We're like, like up like 500 or 700 calories or more or something like that. We're
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
every check-in, I'm like, how you feeling? Do you want more food? We can keep bumping this reverse diet up. We can keep adding more calories to it if you want. And it's like, you just let me know whenever you get sick of the food. And so, and I mean, we're still, I mean, like I said, you're down like another like 5 or 6 pounds on this reverse diet. So it's just like, yeah, you're fucking crushing it. So yeah, I'm excited. So, cool. Other than that, any like last, like, little golden nuggets or like a takeaway or something that, what would you say to, somebody who's in that position right now that you were in, whenever, who, is at the start of maybe where you were whenever you first started? What would you tell them, or what would you have told your, uh, your past self, in that moment whenever you're first starting out? What would you kind of advice would you give them?
Um, I think like taking that risk of trusting
Mm,
somebody else
mm,
is worth it.
mm,
Um, because like you've been an amazing support this whole time.
mm.
We have our amazing support group, like in the
Yeah,
Facebook group.
yeah,
And not that I didn't have support,
yeah,
but at the same time, there was always like those doubts.
yeah,
And so I had to really like hype myself up and get
yeah,
myself to believe in myself that,
yeah,
this was actually going to work. This was
yeah,
going, it's worth it to try it out. It's
mm,
worth it. I'm
yeah.
worth it.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that.
So,
I like that. That's awesome. Yeah. I think too, it's like, I think a lot of people like they have support in their lives, but it also might be a different type of support, or maybe
oh
coming
yeah.
from a different place, or it might be coming in. And I think, I think a lot of people might not even know like what they're like missing out on in terms of like a community, or in terms of like having like a community that supports like a health and fitness journey or like a healthier lifestyle. I think a lot of times, so it's oftentimes the opposite of that, right? A lot of times our communities, it's like it's fun and it's great, but a lot of times it's like, oh, going out and partying or eating, going out and eating, junk food and things like that, which is fine in moderation. There's nothing
Oh
wrong with
yeah.
that.
Yeah. You've got to have that balance,
Yeah. But then having that like kind of like base camp that you can like kind of come back to and be like, hey, like, I'm crushing my goals, or like so and so I saw, enjoyed their Halloween, and they had some candy, and you know what, I was able to, I felt confident that I could have some candy too and still, go and get my workout in the next day kind of deal. And so I think just having like seeing other people's like real lives like play out
hmm
alongside with your real life kind of playing out on a
Yep.
health and fitness journey, it's like it just kind of helps you feel like, like I'm doing the right thing. I'm confident in what I'm doing. And I think that's pretty powerful. So cool. Erin, Let's fucking go. That was a good episode. Let's go. That was a good podcast episode. Let's fucking go. I'm excited. Cool. Other than that, before we end this episode, where can they find you on social media?
I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
Yep.
My handle is EWalkT Fitness.
Let's fucking go. Hell yeah. Check her out. Give her a follow. She's a coach on Team prechtelevate. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to her or me if you guys have any questions or anything like that. So on that note, we're gonna let you guys go. Have a damn good day, and we'll talk to you all in the next episode. Bye, guys.